But I'm wondering if in today's world you do see any particular annihilation events or events verging on becoming an annihilation event. And one that comes to mind that I don't know much about personally, but that seems to not be getting nearly enough time on the news as it should, is whatever is happening in China with the Uyghur minority. But I'm wondering if you have anything to say about that particular event, or if there are any others that come out to you.
Well, we know there's 1 million Uyghurs that are in, we would call them concentration, they would call them labor retreats or something. But we don't really, I think there's 6 or 7 million of them, and we don't really know what the ultimate Chinese purpose is. We do know that radical Islam that is anti-Western doesn't say a thing about the Uyghurs. It doesn't seem to be worried about them. It doesn't seem to worry when Putin leveled Grozny and probably killed over 200,000 Chechens in the Second Chechen War. I don't remember protests as we see now on behalf of Hamas. I don't see protests against the Chinese embassy about the Uyghurs. So radical Islam, as it's manifested in the United States at least, is concerned about one thing, purported Western sin, but it is completely it's not predicated on the actual number of Muslims who are suffering. If it were, then the Russians and Chinese would be prime offenders, which means that they pretty much feel they can do what they want. And so that's one criterion in today. Anti-Semitism is another. I tried to find the original quote from Mr. Rafsanjani, who's still alive, when he said that the nice thing about Israel, it's a one-bomb state. And what he meant was, if you read the entire speech, is that after World War II, the Israelis thought they were making a safe sanctuary so you would not have a second Holocaust. And therefore, they got all of the Israelis who wanted to learn modern Hebrew, the descendant of ancient Hebrew. They would actually be pious and devout Jews in a religious sense, and they would have this culture, whereas the diaspora, people were being intermarried, and they were forgetting, they didn't speak Yiddish anymore. They didn't speak Hebrew, of course. They weren't observant. So the real Jewish culture was now in Israel. And he thought that was a good thing, because with a few nuclear bombs, you could wipe the whole thing out. And the Jews, he said, had made it easier for Iran. And that's actually a topos in Iranian militant rhetoric, that they think they're saving Jews, but actually they're making it easier for us when we get the bomb. So that's something to watch. And it only, given nuclear weapons, if they develop, I don't know, a 30 or 40 kiloton bomb, and they sent, say, 700 missiles through at Israel, and we didn't know which 2 or 3 had a 20 or 30 kiloton bomb on it. It's even with Israel's superb defenses, it's you could see that could happen, and then you have to play out the scenario as I did when I wrote these 4 case studies. What would be the reaction of the world to that? I think the Shia then would be famous throughout the Islamic world, because they would say, well, Israel retaliated in their last gasp and they killed 40 million of us, but we have 80 million. And the Shia, not the Sunni, the Persians, not the Arabs, were the ones that wiped out Israel for good. And they would look at that as both the people who died in the retaliation as martyrdom, and the accomplishment they would feel would live on for centuries, and it would be worth it in their value system. So that means, as I see it, that it's possible that could happen. Very possible. And that's why I don't think that our administration understands that, and therefore applies a set of rules to Israel. It's oblivious to what its enemies intend for it. And so I guess what I'm saying, there's a lot of scenarios in which it could happen today. It wouldn't take much, as I said earlier, to wipe out the Armenians. We just had this dispute where 100,000 Armenians were ethnically cleansed from Nabarak or whatever, Nabarak, the corridor right next to Azerbaijan and Armenia, and they just wiped them out. They'd been there for centuries, and they had to flee back into Armenia. And there's, as I said, it's when you look at places in the world, you want to see how many people are there, how many people speak the language, what's the environment, what's the nature of their enemy. And Turkey is, it's funny. I don't want to be Turkophobic, but when you look at vulnerable peoples and who is threatening them with existential annihilations, Mr. Erdogan comes up again and again. He's threatened the Greeks, he's threatened the Armenians, and he's threatened the Kurds, and now he's threatened the Israelis. He said one day the Israelis are going to look up and our Turkish missiles will be descending upon them, and they better be careful because there may be a Turkish army in Gaza. And so he's threatened almost every, and he does have visions that he's a new sultan. He's praised the Ottomans. And he talks about 1453 as a glorious moment when they extinguished Christian Western influence that had been there for, in the case of Constantinople, since 333 AD.